Hi, it's Paul Camillos. Welcome to Series 6 of Shooting the Breeze. Join me and my co-host Jacinta Govind alongside the STB crew as we cover women's hoops and women in hoops. We'll share conversations and get a little deeper with inspiring players, amazing coaches, and the legends from behind the scenes. Especially in this series, we'll be talking to dream chasers that give it their all and lead with their heart.
Once understanding who the girls were and getting chatting to them and hearing about, previous experiences they had and them understanding myself and the way that I learn, it was very easy to build that bond. And Shelley in particular knows exactly, what to say to me and what I need to hear in order to sort of guide and coach me as we're playing. And I haven't seen someone that quick in a good while.
In an episode you'll want to tune in for, we're talking to newly minted Aussie glider Sara Houston. Wearing the green and gold for the first time at the Asia Oceania Zone Championships, taking place in Thailand right now, I had a chance to talk with Sara as she was preparing for the trip. We talked about her introduction to the sport, a chance encounter with a highly decorated Paralympian, and former STB podcast that seemed predestined. Sara's a great ambassador for women's wheelchair. She's also a talented singer with a recent stint on Australian Idol. But right now, she's focused on making the most of this once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to represent the illustrious gliders in their rebuild on the road to Paris. We also talk about the financial challenges for athletes in parasports and the opportunity for smart businesses to get on board and boost a national team brimming with potential. Make sure to catch a game of wheelchair basketball. Having watched Sara and others at the elite level, I was blown away by their daring and athleticism. Good luck to our gliders squad this year. Enjoy. Welcome to Shooting the Breeze. Unfortunately, my co-host Jacinta Govind can't join us for this podcast, but we are being joined by Sara Houston from Western Australia, one of our wheelchair athletes and a member of the Gliders. Sara, welcome to the show. It's great to have you here.
G'day, Paul. Thank you so much for having me.
It's our pleasure. And you've had a lot going on this year. You've got a lot coming up. But before we get into all of that, I'd really like to find out how you got into playing basketball.
Yeah, it's definitely been a year, that's for sure. So my journey started with a very well-known athlete approaching me at a cafe nearly maybe 3 years ago. And she was actually on the podcast as well. Her name is Amber Merritt. I'd be surprised if you didn't know her.
Yes, we do.
She noticed a limp and no hesitation, she came over and asked me what was the go, how come I was limping, asked me all about myself, and basically had me by the hand going, you have to come to training, you have to try it out. So that was it, and she's one of my closest friends now, and she was my introduction to wheelchair basketball, and I've not looked back. I love it.
That's fantastic. And I got to ask you this question because I know how I reacted the very first time I saw, top flight wheelchair basketball. How did you react the first time you saw the game being played?
I remember my first training session so vividly, and I think my coach, Brad Ness, who is an absolute legend, he didn't really understand the fact that I had absolutely no idea how to play basketball. So I looked at the wheelchairs and thought, okay, that's going to be fun. No worry about that. They're obviously a lot different to a hospital wheelchair, but that part didn't give me any sort of fright. However, I had absolutely no idea about the technical terms. I didn't know what he meant by a pick and roll. And so when it all came to, trying to organise a team of very well-established athletes and then myself, it was utter chaos. So sitting back and watching the team play against each other and sort of seeing how high pace it was, I knew that it was going to be a lot of work that needed to be done. But yeah, it's so epic and fast-paced, and once you're actually in it and understand it a little bit better, it's a whirlwind. It's so much fun.
I got to admit, I'm really surprised that you had no idea about the game
before fronting up to practice.
I know. I was a netballer back in the day, so I was a very active young girl. I grew up in the country in Kalgoorlie. I was born up north, actually, in Port Hedland, but I went to a small primary school, and netball was the massive thing there. So I remember having my first ever basketball training session, and that was actually right before my diagnosis. So basketball sort of pushed its way to the back again. And I think maybe 6 years later, there was a Paralympics tryout day in Kalgoorlie, and I went down and I wanted to be a swimmer. I absolutely loved that idea. And I remember one of the gents actually put me in a chair and made me do the beep test, and I would have been all of 11 or 12. And it was great fun. I was super fast. I loved it, but never went anywhere with it. So coming back to a sport, they haven't figured out netball yet. It's a bit of a grey area. Stop your parents, stay still. But yeah, coming full circle and actually being back in a sport where I can push my body beyond the limits and capabilities that I thought I could, it's so fun. Awesome.
And you're part of the gliders now.
I am.
It's such an amazing story. It's like, I've come here, never done this before, and here I am representing my country.
Honestly, it's huge. I remember my first nationals with the Wheelcats. We won gold. We were undefeated. We still had Miss Amber Merritt and Miss Georgia Inglis on our team, just recently retired. But I think there were about 6 tournaments sort of throughout a couple months. And by the end of it, it became more about, can Huey, aka myself, can Huey actually just get a basket? Because I think I played all of 8 minutes the whole season. I think I got 1 basket, and at that point I had the entire crowd. I had all the referees, coaches on both sides, everyone going bananas. There was no next job. It was just me absolutely stoked, and I got a gold medal out of it. So I'm claiming that one big time, considering I still had no idea what I was doing. But yeah, the support from the team and having so many incredible established athletes in WA, it's definitely helped sort of amp the process up and sort of speedline my progression.
Yeah, because I mean, it's when you look at it from the outside, it's like, it's such a huge journey in such a short space of time. How do you feel about, the Gliders campaign at this point?
It's been nerve-wracking, I won't lie. Once I found out the news about the girls, and again, like I mentioned, they're 2 of my best friends. They've been incredible teachers and mentors for me since I started. So finding out the news that we had 2 very epic athletes recently retire, and knowing that our team was quite a developmental team, and knowing that would impact sort of where we are and where we stand. But I think that the camp at AIS, the selection camp, that really put not just my mind, but a lot of other athletes' minds at ease. Having someone come back who's an already established glider, Shelley, and knowing that there's so many prolific players among the team like Georgia Munro-Cook and Hannah Dodd, and these girls that have so much game knowledge already, which was something that I definitely didn't have, and I'm still learning every session. So I guess the comfort of knowing that there are players that know exactly what they're showing up to, what we need to do to get the job done. And I think the support from the entire team and the motivation to get everyone up to the same level is even higher than it has been. So we've all got the same goal in mind, and the drive has just sort of been full steam ahead since then. So it's honestly epic. I'm so excited to see where we take it.
And you mentioned a couple of things there. First of all, AIS camp. What's it like? I mean, the first time you walk in an AIS as an athlete, what's that feel like?
I genuinely felt like a bit of a fraud the first time I walked in. Considering I started playing this sport at, 28, 765, I reckon 25 I started, or 24 even. And I think, like I said, the drive was there immediately. I had something, I came out of a very negative time in my life, and, COVID had just happened and I'd lost my business. And I think I was just hunting for something that sort of brought me back to myself and having that hunger and that drive in me again. And I remember the first time through the tunnels, rolling into the big stadium and seeing the courts. and firstly thinking I shouldn't be here, but also looking around me and realizing that it was a very special opportunity that I'd been given, and I could either just, hang back and enjoy the ride or really give my all while I was there. And I got invited back a few other times, and I've just been hooked ever since. And it's a very special place to get to go to and come together with the entire nation of the squad and all the other coaches and staff as well. So it's just knowledge from everywhere around Australia coming to one spot, and us all just putting our brains together.
And you mentioned that you've got Shelley Matheson returning, right? So she's medalled 3 times, Athens, Beijing and London. And she's bringing that experience back. And you mentioned, you've lost a couple of veterans. How does that work in terms of, merging the team, melding the team together and, everybody getting on the same page?
It's always interesting knowing that there's new people coming in. I guess for me, it's someone that's new. The thing about this community is that you kind of know about everyone before you meet them, and everyone has something amazing to say about gliders past and present, and even during nationals getting to meet a lot of previous gliders. And I don't say ex because once a glider, always a glider. So seeing these girls and these vets come to nationals and play with the same passion and the same intensity, knowing that we were going to be joined by Shelley and also Bridie Keane, having them come together as 2 fellow teammates, also absolute weapons, their mums as well, and just juggling that balance between looking after Bubs and then coming back onto the court, and there's no downtime. It's straight into the intensity that the coaches require from us and that the team require from each other. So I was nervous, but once understanding who the girls were and getting chatting to them and hearing about, previous experiences they had and them understanding myself and the way that I learn, it was very easy to build that bond. And Shelley in particular knows exactly, I guess, what to say to me and what I need to hear in order to sort of guide and coach me as we're playing. And I haven't seen someone that quick in a good while. So she's held herself together very well, and I'm very, very excited to play on court with her.
That's cool. I want to step away from basketball for a minute, because one of the things that you did this year was you were on TV on a little show that some people may know. I suppose the first thing I want to understand is, how did that happen? How did it come around?
That was so rogue, hey? So rogue. So I, like you said, I was on a little show. The little show has actually been off TV for, I think, 13 years. And a lot of people that know me know that, 1, I don't shut up. 2, I am usually always singing, even when I don't know it. And music is a very, very large part of who I am. So everyone knows that I'm a singer, and that is a very big passion of mine, and it's something that I, continue to work on and would like to see come to fruition eventually. However, I got dogged in by my stepmom this time around. So I'd actually I had no idea Australian Idol, and that's the TV show. So I had no idea Australian Idol was coming to Perth and doing the rounds around Australia to do auditions. And I had been working at the time at a bank and was finding it extremely tough with the capacity between training and wanting to put my all into training, and then also needing a full-time job or needing an income. And I had a surgery that has been pushed back because of COVID and not being, I guess, as important or a higher level of importance than some of the other people that needed surgeries during COVID. So being in the public system with that specialist, they can just let you know whenever. And I was told very, very randomly that I had a surgery booked. It was in a week, and it was my surgery 32. And I went in, and it was just a day case. So I came home, and I noticed my stepmom had been calling me frequently for about 4 hours, and couldn't understand what on earth had happened or what was going on. So I think it was about 8 o'clock at night, and I called her back and was like, "Is everything okay? What happened?" And she said, "No, I happened to run into the judges and the producers of Australian Idol at the airport today." And I laughed. And she said, what are you up to tonight? They're doing a little snippet on TV down in Fremantle, and I reminded her that I just had surgery, and then we both laughed, and I said, you're crazy, and she said, well, tomorrow there is an audition waiting for you. They've opened up a spot for you to be able to go in at the end of the day and do an audition. And I felt like vomiting. I felt like throttling her at the same time, but I also was just in a mindset of like, you know what, why not? Why not? Give it a whirl. So she promptly got off the phone to me before saying, okay, as soon as I get off the phone to you, a producer's going to call you and they're going to get your details, pick a song, and then you're in tomorrow. And yeah, that was it really. So it was, straight into Optus Stadium, sat around for a little bit, had a good chat with Ricky Lee, who her and I go very, very way back, I suppose, when I was in hospital and she was going through Aussie Idol, and sort of rekindled that moment. Meanwhile, I've got my mum, my partner, my dad, my stepmom. My partner's wearing high vis. It's just all a massive throw together. I'm in a wheelchair. It's such a sight. And yeah, we had a good chat, and I think I did about 6 nervous wheeze before I went out. And that was it. I rolled out and ended up standing up out of the chair because it was obviously just a bit of fatigue and soreness from the surgery. And when I stood up, I thought everyone was going to pass out. It was like, she can walk. But yeah, I got up and sang, and they let me through, which was odd. And it just kind of kept going from there.
That must have been, I mean, look, looking at it from the outside, that must have been the craziest 24 hours.
Yeah. Yeah, I told my, and this was just after Nationals, and I told my employer Nationals was very late notice. So I had been out, and then I'd been back, and then I'd been out for another few days, and I'd been back. And I said, you've got me for like 10 months. I'm not traveling anymore because everything's been pushed back. You don't have to worry. And then all of a sudden the surgery was booked. So I had the surgery, and the day after I had to call her to let her know that I'd just been invited to join the top 50 of Australian Idol, which was so nerve-wracking and so confusing for her at the same time. And yeah, I got the gold ticket, and I remember going out and meeting the producers after, and everyone's chatting and it's exciting, and I sort of stopped and was like, can someone tell me what's happening right now? Because like, am I leaving Perth? What happened? Very confused. And yeah, it was definitely just like a punt, and just went for it and went with the flow, and what a journey.
It certainly sounds like it was, crazy and eventful and exciting, but then you also got an unexpected accompaniment.
Yeah, that was great. So the judges were Kyle Sandilands, Amy Shark, Harry Connick Jr. and Megan Trainor.
Yep. And
I knew who Harry Connick Jr. was, but I am not a frequent listener, but I know who he was, and I know he's a very important man. And so after being blown away that I was standing up out of the wheelchair and also frightened that I might fall over, I let them know what song I was singing, which was Waiting on the World to Change by John Mayer. And if I had it my way and it wasn't like 12 hours later from when I found out, I would have hoped for a bit of accompaniment on the guitar. That's sort of the style of music I like singing, acoustic. And I mentioned that to them. I think I said some Danish things as well. The Australian really came out of me on that show. I think I said hooly dooly at one point as well. It was, real Sarah moments. But yeah, I told them that, and I don't think Harry could get out of his chair quicker, and he just sort of walked out to the piano and asked me what key I sang in, and I laughed and said, I have no idea. And that was it. It turned into a bit of a sort of jazzy, funky rendition. It caught me off guard a little bit, but it was really cool. It was really cool. And watching it back when they brought out the episode, it was pretty special. It's a pretty special moment to have with someone so high up in the music industry. So
that is so cool. It really is. It is just so cool. Now, let's just move away from all the fun stuff for a minute, because you've touched on something that we've talked about a number of times on the podcast. And you were saying that, you'd found a job that was, able to accommodate the needs for the athletics, for playing basketball, and then, the show came up. But the thing is, obviously, it must be hard to be able to structure a job around an elite athletics career, right? Particularly one where let's be honest, there's a need for athletes to be able to live, right? So you need a job because the funding isn't there so that you can just be, an athlete. Tell me about how complex it is to be in that situation, because I know Amber's mentioned it when we had her on the podcast, but I'd like to understand a bit more from your perspective about the situation.
It's probably one of the toughest components, I'd say, and it's definitely something, as soon as I started, I could see that there was room for improvement. My relationship with a professional career has always been a tricky one since having my disability, and my capacity has only worsened through the years. So I find that, one, I've gone through so many jobs, and I found when I was younger, I wasn't as transparent about my disability because I just wanted to make it work, and I found it easier to do that. And unfortunately, a lot of employers weren't as understanding of physical disability and what it entailed, and I was a lot younger, so it was very hard to speak my mind with confidence and hope that someone would understand. And in turn, it resulted in pushing the limits and needing time off, and doing jobs that definitely weren't right for me. I think I was a car detailer at one point, and that was just a bit of a rogue one. That was never going to work out. But then, trying to weave your way through the workforce and find something that aligns with you as a person specifically. And, there are some athletes that don't have the capacity to work full-time or part-time. And, they might have funding from government, and, a lot of us have funding in the sense of NDIS. However, that doesn't pay for your rent. It doesn't pay for, specifically as a person with a disability, I'm on the highest HBF that I can be on, and that costs me an awful amount. A lot of it I don't use, but I need it there as the safety net because of my disability and what could potentially happen. So there's so many outgoings. There's your car, there's your phone, there's the cost of living is ridiculous as well. And so coming into this sport was one of the most exciting things, and it is genuinely the drive at the moment, and I am obsessed with it. But what I have noticed in my time as an athlete is that we do burn the candle at both ends, so to speak, because we can't just focus on the sport itself and developing to be the best athlete that we can. And, the career span for a wheelchair basketballer, for instance, can be a lot longer. And I think what I've noticed is that a lot of my fellow teammates and people that I've seen be around for a long time and then retire or take a break have done that so that they can progress in their personal life, or to start actively saving to find themselves a home, or to be able to afford rent, or to maybe look at having a family. And I think one thing that I would just absolutely love to see happen is, we're very lucky to have funding through the sport, and if your training capacity improves enough and you're offered a scholarship, that's amazing. And there's things that we can branch out and afford through our disability funding. However, it's the time off to go be an athlete and represent your country, and it's the 2 hours in the morning where you're at training and you're giving it your all, and then you've got to go to work for 8 hours, and then you go and repeat. So in my mind, I see, top 20 athletes in Australia in a sport being given a wage, and they wouldn't have annual leave because they wouldn't be taking annual leave, which doesn't exist if you're a full-time worker and a full-time athlete, because you're traveling for your sport. There's no need to have the mental drainage of needing to go to work and focus on something like that can be extremely mentally strenuous or physically strenuous, because you can literally just focus on your job as an athlete. And I think our team in particular could become even greater and even higher ranking if there was something along those lines, and there is an athlete payment. It has a lot to do with the tier of athlete you are and also where we place in the world. But unfortunately, that can't be relied upon because our outgoings just far outweigh what it is that I guess we're bringing in. So it's really tough, and it definitely sort of reigns on my mind a lot about, how long can I do this sustainably, and how long can I get support from the people around me as, again, nearly a 30-year-old. So we've definitely got ideas of what we want to do to try and change things up, but I think the end goal would result in our Australian team probably being the most dominant they can be again, because the focus would just be about sport.
So this is obviously an issue that we need to look at as a nation, because if we can't allow athletes like yourself to be able to focus on, practice and being an athlete, there's always going to be a compromise in terms of the outcomes. And here's where there's an obvious issue with the funding model, and that is, it's like, okay, the better you place, the more funding you get. But if you haven't got the funding to be able to allow you to focus on being an athlete, then that becomes so much harder. Now, look, there's no easy answers to this, but these are things that get discussed. Right? Certainly you would be discussing it amongst your teammates, amongst people in the community. What are the ideas?
I've actually brought this up like 2 days ago training with one of my coaches. And he basically said, reach out to some people and, go send an email to Gina Reinhardt, or reach out to Twiggy Forrest, or, who is it that we can speak to? And there's definitely been moments where you kind of want to curl up and go, how am I meant to do this? Do I start a GoFundMe? Like, it is really tough. And I think there's a lot of focus on having that life and sport balance, and that's fantastic. And it is very important. Of course it's important, but I think in order to do, like you said, to do the sport well enough and to develop to be a team, or is no longer a development team, that is an established team that play very well together, there needs to be more backing. I think if I was paid a minimum wage, there's athletes out there that are absolutely incredible and they're getting paid an astounding amount of money and they bloody deserve it. But a minimum wage to focus for the time that you are an athlete, and, there's got to be standards. There's got to be requirements. You can't just willy-nilly get given it. You need to meet every expectation, as we do with our scholarships as well. They're not just given. You need to upkeep every part of that. But with the sport, there already comes opportunities. So there's opportunities to go out and speak to people about it, and to speak about people with disabilities in sport, and to speak about the Paralympics and all these different components that would only draw more attention to our sport in general and other sports in general. So for us to be able to do those, we then need to take time off work to be able to go and share what it is that we love about it. And I can tell you right now that I'd love to go and be a part of that instead, and to grow not only, I guess, my platform as a speaker and as someone with lived experience, and it might be with childhood illness, it might be with mental health, it might be the fact that all these different things have compounded and come together in sport, and how that's been super beneficial for me. But in order to do that, you either offer up your time and do it for the love of doing it, which a lot of us do. But if that was, solely a job or a contract or something like that, I just see the progression of this sport in particular, and a lot of other parasports as well, plummeting. We want to draw more attention to this, and we want to grow the nation and the developing players. And I think that can only happen with a lot more people doing the work, I suppose.
I often wonder, and I mean, look, this is just kind of like a blue sky kind of thing. Why is it that industry doesn't necessarily pay attention to wheelchair sports or disabled sports?
When you say industry?
Well, when I say industry, I mean business. I mean a company that would ordinarily go and sponsor,
Yeah.
you know, an able-bodied sport isn't necessarily looking to sponsor a disabled sport.
I had a chat with a lady at a Women in Sport event recently, and I'm kicking myself because I've forgotten her name, but she works for Basketball Australia, and she basically spoke about that. She said, "What is it that you need?" And I mentioned the same thing, but also something that I've mentioned constantly, and this is what I find really special about the disabled community in general, is we've all had something to do with very big organisations in one way or another. It might be Spina Bifida Foundation. It might be Kids Cancer Support Group, Telethon. Within all of these things, especially in WA, I've had the opportunity to work alongside West Coast Eagles, Fremantle Dockers, BHP Billiton, and the list absolutely goes on. So I'm only one person, and the hunger that I have to be able to reach out to these massive industries and these big head honchos, and one, showcase what we do, and two, ask for a bit of help. I working at the bank that time ago, I knew that they were sponsoring a Paralympian, and that's fantastic. There is a section in a lot of big industries where they sort of have that funding. However, again, it comes to the groundwork, and I think that the drive and the capacity that we could have as athletes to be able to go and do these things as our own sort of unit could only advance if there was that sort of, I don't know, maybe contractual side of things where we're going out, we're doing the work. And, I'm stoked to be able to do that as a volunteer side of things. And we're getting there slowly, even in the last 5 years. The changes that I'm seeing around accessibility and inclusion or diversity and culture and race and sex and everything like that, we're starting to talk more, and it's fabulous. But I think that, speaking to this lovely lady, I think that there needs to be a brainstorm from people that have played past and previous, and the things that we've noticed happen already, but what is it that we actually want? And I guess how could we potentially achieve it? But it comes from groundwork and athletes putting in the hard yards, and again, us showcasing what it is that we're doing. And I think the fact that there's things like this, like podcasts, and there's far more media exposure now, and showing people just how raw and brutal the sports can be and what it is that we put into this. It's definitely growing. I think it's growing at a turtle pace at the moment, and I think that there's definitely more that's going to and can be done. It's just, I guess, speaking to the right people and coming down to the athlete level and finding out, I guess, what the hardship parts are and what we're doing well at, but what we could be doing better at, and maybe going from there.
One of the things you just mentioned there a couple of times is showcasing the sport.
Yeah.
One of the things that strikes me is that we don't see enough wheelchair basketball. I'm not just talking about on streaming platforms or whatever, but I'm just talking about actually being able to get to a game. There's not a lot that's played. And yet, and I'm looking at as part of the notes that our producer Mary put out, there's the high performance calendar for wheelchair basketball. And I'm looking at it, and there's not a lot happening in Australia. There's Bangkok in Thailand and Osaka, Japan, and Beijing, China, but there's not a lot happening in Australia.
That's exactly right.
So
the Women in Sport event we've been working with a lot of the staff and the coaches at BWA, Basketball WA, and the one thing that we keep speaking about is, especially in WA, we have an incredible amount of facilities where we can showcase these games. The home of the Wildcats is just one, which is Bendat Stadium, and we have had at-home tournaments where we've sort of versed different Perth teams and that sort of thing. But there's a big chat about
having a nationals come to WA and just, I guess, hyping it up in our own nation is something that I think could be really important. But friendlies tournaments, like you mentioned, we've got a friendlies tournament in Japan straight after our AOZ tournament. It'd be nice to actually do that before the qualifying tournament, so we get a bit of practice in. But there's, even with national competitions, and it comes from people knowing people and word of mouth, but going to different national tournaments and having people recognize you for being an actual athlete, it's special. And then I guess seeing it in a bigger sense and seeing, the Commonwealth 3-on-3 tournament, the first time we've ever done 3-on-3, and, our men won gold, our girls won silver. And I remember watching the first game and trying to figure out how we could air it. And the particular channel that was streaming all of their Commonwealth games had none of ours on there. So we rallied as a group and messaged everyone we knew, and we sent bunches of messages through socials just to get them to put it up on their viewing platform. But it's definitely, like you said, it's almost like a forethought. And I think the one thing that I'd like to see more of is the prior planning, so that we can really start to talk about it and really start to advertise what's coming up and create much more of a hype around what it is that we're doing. It's not that people don't want to come and see it and they don't enjoy it. It's just that you don't know about anything. And I think with that, you get a bigger turnout, you get more supporters, you get bigger industries watching the game and wanting to be a part of it. And that's growth, and that's sort of how we're going to grow. But, in the meantime, it's a lot of travel and traveling out of the country and going to those places where, it is a little bit bigger already for them. But I would really like to see not just WA, but Australia as an entirety, get back to that podium finishing spot where, we were dominating. And there's absolutely no reason why we can't get back to that. But that's why I also think now is a very special time with so many, media platforms and so many people like yourselves taking initiative to really find out more about what it is that we're doing. Because from the outside, it looks bloody epic. But there is a lot that goes into it, and there's a lot of special people involved. So I guess it's just talking about it, advertising, sharing that, and again, working at ground level to not just relying on staff, but working with athletes that have that lived experience and potential contacts to bring people together and muster up things, not just for them and for the organisations, but for ourselves as athletes, because if they're advancing, we are as well, I suppose.
And you mentioned you got the qualifiers before the Osaka Cup in Japan. I'm guessing most people don't realise that that's next week.
Yes, sir.
No. I'm sitting on my bed right now, surrounded by my suitcase and everything that is important that must go in the bag. So it's definitely it's go time. We're all starting to get a bit nervy and excited, but we've got a bunch of group chats going on with staff and managers that are kicking us up the backside and making sure that we're onto it, but also team chats as well, where we're all just venting to each other, finding out what on earth we need to remember, what snacks are a good idea to bring, which Nintendo Switch games people are bringing. We've got it down pat, and I'm very excited. I've never been to Thailand, so I'm keen to check out what all the fuss is about. And then Japan, which will just be insane. My coach Craig, I couldn't take a holiday afterwards, obviously, but he's promised me that I'll get traditional ramen. So I'm sort of counting on that.
Well, I can tell you from a family holiday to Japan that all the food, ramen, whatever, it is all spectacular. So you've got the 3x3 championship and the qualifiers for Paris coming up in Bangkok.
We do.
That's huge. And then literally like 3 weeks later, you're in Osaka for the Osaka Cup. How do you prep yourself for a schedule like that, particularly, given how important the AOZ qualifiers are?
If you don't laugh, you cry. No, I'm kidding. So I saw the calendar and was like, yeah, right, okay. I've got to get selected first, so we'll see how that goes. Oops, I got selected. So again, I think it's very special that I am from the west coast of Australia, because we do have a few athletes that are coming over from here, both men and women. So we're kind of riding the high and the low together. Our DTE race where we train, it's been a real shift in pace, and it's not just been with, a few of us, it's everyone. So the coaches are onto it, the medical staff are onto it, physios, nutritionists. The support level has always been amazing, but like now more than ever, everyone just wants to see you do and be your absolute best. So from ground level as athletes, just huddling together and figuring it out as to, what to be organized with, what not to forget, even just feedback after trainings and what we need to work on with each other. It's a different aspect from what we get from coaches and then what we get from our strength and conditioning coaches as well. So it's definitely been a team effort. And there are very many aspects to it and, I's that have to be dotted and T's that have to be crossed and paperwork and things like that. But at the end of the day, it comes down to the very few games that we have when we are over in AOZs. And, we are lucky that if we don't make it round through the round this time, that we do have all right, let's try again later in April. Yeah. Also back in Japan. So that's more ramen for me. But yeah, it'll be cool. And, it's quite a long time that we're away. So I can only imagine that there's going to be a lot of team training in between that. So I find it very valuable when we all do come together and train together because that's time as a squad, broken down all over Australia. So it's going to be extremely valuable just to spend that quality time together as the squad and get every chance we can on court to learn each other and work together.
It's got to be hard. Like looking at that schedule, it's got to be hard for you in terms of just being able to juggle, day-to-day life and a schedule like that. Because, just looking at the dates, it's almost like, what country am I in if it's Tuesday?
Yeah, literally. Look, I think the terrifying part into the lead up was just trying to manage Christmas and not eating too much ham, but we've made it through just. And yeah, now I guess looking at it and seeing the color code and it's I would have used different colors personally to make it more appealing, but it's exciting. It's very exciting, and there is a lot of uncertainty and there's definitely stresses there about the financial side of things and how on God's earth I'm meant to, pay my way through all of it. But where there's a will, there's a way. And, I'm very, very lucky that I have support around me and it doesn't happen to everyone. And it's very much an opportunity of a lifetime. And it's something that I actually didn't think I'd ever be capable of doing. So I told my coach, you've got me. Wherever you pick me for, I'm there, I'm with you, I want to live that experience. So I checked probably way too late, but my passport is in date, we're good.
That's good. That's always a big one.
Always a big one. So yeah, just getting myself sorted and leaning on my teammates to find out the absolute necessities of what to take away with me so that I am very much prepared for when I'm over there.
Now, one of the questions I want to ask you is, because again, I'm just looking at this schedule. So literally from Monday the 8th till the 11th, it's the 3x3 championships.
Yes.
And then from the 11th to the 21st, it's the qualifiers. How do you find that transition from 3x3 to the regular game?
So I'm actually really interested to see how that goes personally. You and I both. So I personally, I won't be on the 3-on-3 team. However, I imagine we'll be doing a lot of the training with them anywho. So I guess in one sense that gives me a bit more time to really work on what it is that I need to work on to be ready for the 5-on-5 qualifiers. I also am very excited because it gives me that extra time to, I guess, just people watch and see other players in motion. And I think another thing that I was speaking about with one of my WA coaches, Brad Ness, was about sort of regulating and desensitizing to the environment. So I am very ADHD. I am very excitable. I get very distracted. It's a known thing. But being able to sort of get comfy in that environment and that training environment and sort of get into a routine. Luckily, there's not really much of a time difference. So the sleep side of things should be fine. But yeah, it's exciting, I guess, one, to just get straight into it, but to also have that time with the team to continue training together this time so that we have every chance that we can to really perform from the 11th until the 21st. Whoa!
I'm really excited for the opportunities and the potential for the gliders in this run up to Paris. I suppose one of the things that I'm really curious about is, how do you get the team, or how does the team, generally work together in relation to focusing on those goals? And like, what do you guys tell each other when you try, you're focusing on, we've got to take this first step and the second step, but there's the goal at the end. It's the Paralympics. It's Paris. That's what we're aiming for.
It's been a pretty special couple years for me in particular, as, I'm not sure sort of how things ran prior to me being there. And I know that we've had some epic Paralympics in the past. But like I said, we have been a developing team for some time, and there's been a lot of, I guess, far more experienced athletes working with far more development athletes. And I think we're now at a time where we're more balanced. And Craig Campbell, our Australian coach, his focus has been a lot around team mentality and having that intention and what is it that we're actually all working for. And, over I'm 28, I'd say the last 20 years, I've had a lot to do with different organisations and charities like Canteen and Camp Quality. And I've definitely stepped into a leadership role there where I've, been able to support, whether it's other patients or teammates around me in that aspect. And we've kind of adapted a lot of, I guess, what I was used to in those senses into our team camps and the way that we're sort of driving the bus. And yeah, it's become more about, why am I here? What is it that I want to achieve? And not just that, but learning everyone else's story and everyone else's why as well, because initially you just turn up and there was a bunch of girls there. We've all got a different disability and a different story to tell, and funny quirks about each and every one of us. And, we can all get along really well. But when it's broken down into understanding exactly why that person wants to get out there and get on that field, it just, I guess, feels a different part of your motivation meter. And it's been broken down in a way that we can really learn each other, but also what steps we need to take in order to become the best teammates for each other as well. Because, it's not a one-man game, and we've seen it all over the place where, you really rely on one person to make it happen. And for us to be the best, we need everyone to be the best. So it's been really special to watch all these girls develop in just the amount of time that I've been a part of the team.
And, really, we don't have that long until Paris.
I know. Oh, boy.
Right? But the good thing is there's a couple of opportunities for people to come and see the team.
Yeah.
There's the Kevin Coombs Cup in Brisbane in April, and there's an international series that's either going to be in Victoria or Queensland in July. What would you say to people who are listening in and who haven't been to see the gliders or even a wheelchair basketball? What would you say to them?
It's like dodgem cars on steroids. Come and watch it. It's absolute chaos. My first tournament, I don't know if it was 2 or 3 years ago now, but it was my first ever gliders camp that was a week long, and it led into the Queensland Classics. And as much as the small amount of family that were over there and got to come and watch me make an absolute fool of myself because I had no idea what I was doing, they thought it was the most incredible thing. But then getting to actually sit back and watch some of the established players play and just see the effort and, the no fear mentality that comes into it, keeping in mind that it's basketball rules. It's, when I tell people that, they're like, so the ring's lowered, right? And, there's no travel rules. And it's like, mate.
No.
Like it's chaos. Trying to get a ball that high in the air. All my shirts barely fit me now because my shoulders are huge. Weird flex, but it's hard. It's really bloody hard. And, you're seeing high pointers that, go flying, or like you said with Amber, tilt up on wheels. You're seeing low pointers that are doing somersaults and landing on their faces and then just popping back up again and going for it. It's so wild to watch live, and it's, you know, not just something that I play, but it's something that we as a household, we watch often as well. And it's honestly a perler of a time. And there's a few good laughs as well. It gets pretty rowdy. So I definitely say come and watch if you get an opportunity, and come say hey, you know, ask questions. One thing that I love about this community is that no one's scared to answer any questions, and it might be about our, you know, our health and our journey. It might be about the sport. It might be about open leagues where able-bodied and people with disability can come down and play together, which is so much fun, especially with workplaces and things like that. There's so many opportunities where people that don't use wheelchairs can come down and do the same thing, and it's just as chaotic and even funnier in those situations. So it's it's worth it. It's really worth checking it out. And, you know, I hope that's the first of many. Kevin Coombs Cup's very special. And seeing the juniors play, we're very lucky to have one of our WA girls who only just turned 14.
Wow.
I'm her biggest fan, hey. Her name's Ebony Stevenson, and she'll be at KCC, I imagine, but you know, someone at that age, I think also because she has no fear in her yet, and that's maybe why she doesn't mind falling out all the time. I know how I'm going to bruise, you know, I take a little bit of care. But seeing these players get on the field and just do absolutely chaotic things that, one, you didn't even think was possible anyway, but two, coming from people at such a young age, is beautiful, and it's really exciting as a, I guess, senior player now that you can see the development stages and you can see the excitement that everyone has to see where this sport's going. It's honestly so cool.
Now, just before we wrap up, there's something I noticed today on LinkedIn. You are a brand ambassador, I believe.
A brand ambassador? Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Now,
where is that on LinkedIn? Oh, wow.
yeah. Now, I've got to give you an opportunity to give a shout out to them.
Is this GripX?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So, honestly, it's just so bizarre. It all kind of happened very quickly. I'm huge on trying different things. If it's going to make me better or hope, then why not? So actually, I remember my first training session, I started getting enormous blisters on my hands, and I thought, why is no one wearing gloves? And I got laughed at by pretty much everyone, boys and girls. And I said, so when do your hands callous? And they said, maybe 4 years, maybe, you know. I was like, oh, good, lots to look forward to. So a part of, you know, your machinery is your tires, and just like basketballers that run around, they've got shoes, they can be slippy, the floors can be weird conditions. I've heard that, you know, in other countries the floors can be a little slipperier or a little stickier and that sort of thing. And there's been a product design that basically maybe like a film as such, and creates a bit more of a grip for the underneath of your shoe. And one of my coaches offered me a bottle to try out before training, and a bunch of other teammates, and I gave it a go, and it was actually really cool. It was really cool to actually see a difference, and they ended up giving me another bottle of a formula that they just started for wheels in particular, and not only does it smell delicious, PSA, you can't drink it or eat it, or, you know, but it smells like bubblegum. It's delicious. But I'm also very excited because putting on a new set of wheels, as much as it looks awesome, it makes them pretty hardcore to wrap your hands around and grip. So just seeing sort of the difference of what that might look like when I am playing, you know, even in Thailand, somewhere where it's far more humid, and just seeing if that does anything. So it's a first. It's a first for me. I'm very excited about it. I feel very honoured. And yeah, I'm hoping it's just the beginning. So
awesome. And obviously the other thing that we need to say to anybody in industry and commerce out there, sponsoring the gliders is a great opportunity because it gives you an opportunity to get involved at the ground level with an international team.
100%. 100%. And we're only advancing and we're only going further, and we're going to do that regardless. So, you know, whether we go at turtle pace and we make big changes ourselves, or, you know, whether there are industries out there that want to jump on board and, I guess, jet start the process and get us, you know, back on podium level where we can all actively put in 110%, you know, rather than 100%. And I guess the development will just happen quicker. It's pretty special, and there is a lot of room for advancing, and there is so much more coming up that I can see and entail. So I just hope that I get to be a part of it for a lot longer, and that it can become something a little bit more sustainable for me personally. But for now, we're winging it, we're having fun, and just honestly taking every opportunity we can, because it's a once in a lifetime. And the fact that I'm sort of back here and I get to be an athlete, that's just real random. That's so cool to me, and it's very weird to say out loud. So yeah, I definitely say to anyone that's thought about looking into it or having a chat about it, speak up, message us on Instagram, have a chat with our coaches, reach out to us. We're more than willing to have a yarn about it and share, I guess, our experiences and what it is and where it is that we want to go.
Sarah, I got to say, it's been so much fun having you on the podcast, having an opportunity to talk to you about all this different stuff. And also got to say, best of luck for the AOZ Championships. And it's got to be streamed somewhere, and we'll definitely make a point of watching.
Honestly, if it comes down to me FaceTiming the whole thing, I'll set up a phone somewhere. No, it'll be out there. I reckon check out the International Wheelchair Association, their socials. But thank you so much. I really appreciate the opportunity, and you guys are bloody legends. And I was very excited to meet you all, and I'm very excited to see you all again soon. So keep an eye out for me doing some weird and wonderful things on court. I guarantee it'll happen. But yeah, fingers crossed, hey?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks so much, Sarah.
No worries at all. Thank you so much, Paul.
Make sure to subscribe wherever you get your podcasts so you get our latest pod. And we really appreciate if we could get a like and a review so we can extend the reach to more listeners. And don't forget, follow us on Instagram, Twitter and LinkedIn.